Where the Mississippi and Missouri rivers meet is where two of the Western Conference's most powerful forces converge. St. Louis City 2, unbeaten in 9, welcomes first place in the Western Conference, Houston Dynamo, unbeaten in 8. Welcome inside Energizer Park, along with our broadcast team. I'm Jake Griffith. A pleasure to have you alongside us. St. Louis City 2, they're off to their best start in club history. Unbeaten in 15 straight at home coming into this fixture. Their reward is a Houston Dynamo team who are the team of the month in the month of April, and for good reason. 3 consecutive victories for Dynamo Dos, and they've allowed the fewest goals in 8 matches in league history. Look at how these sides line up. First for the home side, St. Louis and manager David Critchley. It's a 3-4-3, 2 total personnel changes. Tyson Pierce returns to this first 11 on the pitch. The homegrown signing making his 3rd start in MLS Next Pro play. That midfield will be very crucial. This is an aggressive Houston Dynamo Dos team. They love that press. They love that counter press. David Critchley saying this week, can they find ways to play around it? Pierce over on that left wing back position, a real pacey guy, will help bring up that left flank and try to help St. Louis get some offense going against a stingy Houston defense. And for Houston Dynamo Dos and manager Jeremy Hurdle, who is the coach of the month for the month of April, they roll with a 4-2-3-1. They make 3 personnel changes, including up front at the single striker position. Artur Souza will make his 6th start of 2026. Souza, 4 goal contributions this season. There's been no shortage of goals for Houston Dynamo. A plus 17 goal difference right now, tied with Crown Legacy out in the Eastern Conference for the highest goal difference in MLS Next Pro. But Souza trying to help unlock this offense today against an equally stingy defense in St. Louis, who are coming off a clean sheet against Minnesota United 2 on the road. Just 8 goals allowed for St. Louis City 2 here in 2026. And St. Louis, they are riding high, unbeaten in 9 consecutive matches. David Critchley, he said earlier this week that the biggest catalyst for this start, he said it has to be the story of the mental toughness for this team. They've had moments where they've led. They've had moments where they've had to fight back. Thinks the biggest area that deserves the shout-out is their mental focus. Jorge Escobar is our center referee. He sounds the whistle, and the ball is moving here inside Energizer Park. Along with our broadcast team, I'm Jake Griffith. Glad to have you with us. The 2 top teams in the Western Conference, both unbeaten, each with 23 points in the table. Both managers spoke at length earlier in the calendar week about the importance of playing fixtures of this magnitude at the start of the season. David Critchley described it as a real cream rising to the top situation as that ball goes over the top, and it's at the feet of Pedro Cruz. 8th start in as many appearances for Pedro Cruz, goalkeeper of the year finalist in MLS Next Pro a season ago. We do get a whistle for a stoppage, and Gustavo Doman, the loan acquisition from Fluminense in the offseason, restarts play. And now he will have to redo that. Jorge Escobar wasn't quite ready. Jeremy Hurdle in the midweek is his team struggling to build out from the back, and they turn it over. He described this as a contest that will really allow this Dynamo Dos team to see if they can play with the mental fortitude required to go into a difficult environment. They're currently in the midst of a 10-match road swing. This their 5th straight road fixture. But he said if this team can stick to their game plan, play their style of football today, play as themselves, he feels confident in their ability to come out on top. He also described it as the toughest game his Dynamo Dos team will face and have faced so far this season. St. Louis, an older, more veteran-laden team. This is a Houston Dynamo side that They do dip heavily into their academy system. Had the youngest roster, averaged about 18 and a half years old a season ago. Working it wide to the outside. Here is CITY2 knocking. Cut over to Wagner. Trying to play it back ahead. And this is where Riley Lynch will track it down in the shadows. Lynch trying to stand this cross up. It falls to Wagner, top of the area. Lynch back on it. Has a go from distance. Turned away. And Chris Pearson able to knock that ball to the back line. And here is Stone Marion, the 18-year-old. Second start in MLS Next Pro play. Trying to work it back over to him and just not in a position to receive that. Change of possession will occur via the throw-in. Reese Miller set to toss this in for Houston Dynamo Dose, the former Virginia Cavalier returning to this organization after spending time in the Dynamo Academy pre-college. Made a couple appearances for Dynamo Dose during the inaugural Next Pro season in 2022. That slid out of play. St. Louis will have the throw, much to the protests of Houston Dynamo. CITY2 coming off the aforementioned hard-fought draw, 0-0 against Minnesota United on the road in Rochester, Minnesota, playing the Loons were a bit of a neutral site contest in that one. It is the first time that St. Louis have been kept out of goal in the regular season, going all the way back to last year, their 0-0 draw against Austin FC2. Verdos sending that one to a penalty shootout. But David Critchley, he said despite the lack of goals, he was most pleased with the way they defended the ball. Mentioned this week that was a big focus in training last week, their defensive structure, keeping numbers in front of it. Big focus on keeping a clean sheet as well. His message to the team this week is now find a way to put all these elements that are ever changing together. They've had flashes in matches of defensive brilliance like the Minnesota match, keeping the Loons out of goal as Houston will swing this out wide, looking for that switching pass, and they find it now. In on goal, it's Dynamo Dose at the byline, trying to cut back. McPartland couldn't grab it, and it is cleared away on an emergency basis. Jeremy Hurdle, manager for Dynamo Dose, he had described their in-possession ability, establishing control, grabbing a hold of some of these different, rather rhythmic moments of this match as a real key to victory this evening for Houston Dynamo, specifically when they can break that St. Louis press. They play it through. Here's Reese Miller now on the turn. Miller has support on the underlap. It's Doman knifing inside. Doman going for it. And a lunging stop made by McPartland. Already has one goal contribution on the season. The Brazilian had his eyes on his first goal in a Dynamo Dose shirt. McPartland able to close the door very quickly on that effort, and Riley Lynch will have another throw. Lucas McPartland, a player that earlier in the season, when I had a chance to catch up with Critchley, he talked at length about St. Louis under some duress here as Pearson trying to steer that away from danger and instead puts it out of play. But McPartland in net, getting the start for the 6th time this season for David Critchley. Critchley had said that they had a prior relationship because of Critchley's time in the academy prior to last season when Critchley took over the coaching reins of St. Louis CITY2, had risen through the ranks, former St. Louis U16, U17 academy coach, as we get another whistle for a stoppage here from Jorge Escobar. And Critchley, he said that he feels like McPartland, after spending about 5 weeks with the first team in preseason training, has started to pick up some of those attributes that you might see in Roman Berkey. Felt like Berkey took him under his wing a bit in the preseason, showed him the ropes. They're very high. on Lucas McPartland as a player going forward, and Houston Dynamo Dose going forward here. That into an empty area where McPartland will corral that ball in. Houston, the press coming up crucial there. One back by Souza. Now set up here, top of the area, trying to work it back inside to Arana. On the move now is St. Louis. They'll cut this one forward. Palmer Alt trying to split two defenders and unable to do so. Good recovery defense there for Dynamo Dose. And it's Arana, the homegrown signing, trying to swing past that final defender. Back on it is Dynamo. They have options ahead. This is DiMorelli looking for the cutback. And DiMorelli's pass cut out. Biggest area that David Critchley had emphasized ahead of this fixture was for St. Louis City 2, trying to find ways to play around that defensive shape of Houston Dynamo. Yes, when in possession in that 4-2-3-1, but when they press, that compact 5-2-3 pressing shape, which has netted a lot of goals in transition this year for Houston Dynamo Dose. 5 counter-attacking goals in 2026, one of the highest marks in MLS Next Pro. Now some more whistles here from our man in charge. Lillington will slow walk this one up, surveying his options as we come up on minute 10 of this contest. Nudged back out of space. Mokutia able to dislodge that ball. Jumping back in front of it is St. Louis City 2. Deflected, it falls back to the feet. Here is St. Louis City. That one put out of play, and it will stay on this end. A corner loading for St. Louis City 2. Not an area, if you're Houston Dynamo Dose, you want to concede many set-piece opportunities to City 2. They do lead the league in set-piece goals this season. Scored off corners a handful of times this year, most recently against Tacoma Defiance in Ventura County. They play the short route in. Lofted into the mixer and knocked away by Dynamo Dose. Headed back along, though. Lillington will stand this cross up out wide, trying to find Palmer Alt. Now McDonald able to keep the pressure on. It's worked back down here by City 2. They have all top of the area, instead cutting to the end line, but running out of room was St. Louis, and it will be a goal clearance for Pedro Cruz. Jeremy Hurdle joked that this is a battle of two teams that really have similar identities and want to play at the same style. You see St. Louis already off that restart just a moment ago, trying to press, get those numbers set. That press is something crucial for David Critchley and company, something he's tried to establish during his time, and it's been a core tenet of St. Louis City as an organization. Here they are again over on this right-hand side now. It was Riley Lynch, former Town FC man, before making the switch over to St. Louis City 2 in the offseason. Lynch able to set St. Louis up. They've had one corner from the far flag. They'll have this from the near one. Play the short option in again. At this time it's Palmer Alt, corner of the 18. Helped back along Lynch. He'll whip this ball in. First contact made by St. Louis, but headed significantly wide. A nice service here, right into a crowd of bodies in front of Pedro Cruz. Now Cruz under some duress. That was an area that St. Louis had some struggles with against Minnesota United, getting that crossing game going. Had just one cross completed across the 90 minutes against Minnesota United 2 in that 0-0 draw last week. Did spend a lot of time, though, in the Loons' attacking half. Of their 390 passes completed, 170 of them were completed in the Minnesota United defensive half of the field. Just could not find that ruthlessness in that draw to put one of those chances away. And they had chances, 3 shots on target, but held to just 1 in the final 45 minutes. Trying to slip that one back through over to McDonald, who runs out of real estate. A change of possession will occur via the throw-in once more for Houston Dynamo. Dynamo Dos coming off a resounding victory on the road at Colorado Rapids 2, a 3-1 win over the Western Conference winners a season ago, falling in the championship final was Eric Boucher's bunch. Jeremy Hurdle, he reflected on that this week, and he said that the thing that he loved the most, he was really happy with the first half performance. Had about 18 shots in the opening 45 minutes of that contest. He admitted that this is a Houston Dynamo team. They grow into the game. They're not necessarily a fast-starting bunch, but he loved the way they came out and grabbed a hold of that contest early. Here's an early ball in, seeking Tyson Pierce, streaking over on that left flank, and instead it finds the touchlines, and it will be a throw-in for Houston. Dynamo Dos team, it's been some one-way traffic against them here to open these 15 minutes of this contest. St. Louis has spent a considerable amount of time in this end to the tune of 58% possession. I haven't seen Houston so far find that ability to play through this well-organized defense of St. Louis. That was an area that Jeremy Hurdle had lauded his team in against Colorado Rapids, that diversity in chance creation. They had stretches where they would just go right through the heart of Colorado's defense. Then they'd have opportunities where they'd go over the top. St. Louis trying to go over the top here, and well defended by Dynamo Dos. Nearly a giveaway at the back for Dynamo. They do finally take the pressure off, albeit St. Louis will corral that ball back in once more. St. Louis, their first team, they are in action in MLS play tonight. They go on the road to take on Colorado Rapids and Matt Wells, who have had a decent start to the 2026 MLS season. They also find themselves into the final 8 of the U.S. Open Cup, something that St. Louis also finds themselves in. Back-to-back wins over Chicago Fire. Also a win against FC Tulsa for St. Louis in the round of 32. Dynamo trying to play this one through. McPartland will come out off his line and just clear that away. Speaking of the Open Cup, this Houston Dynamo team, they are into the final 8 as well. But for St. Louis City, former MLS Next Pro standout Mekhi Joyner able to tally a goal 2 U.S. Open Cup fixtures ago. Had a solid run to help St. Louis set up the winning goal in their win against Chicago Fire in the round of 16. David Critchley, he had said that when you look at guys, whether it's the Open Cup, whether it's MLS play, and of course players like a Joyner, a Brendan McSorley, Jaziel Orozco, Miggy Perez, they come to mind. He called it proof of concept for his young team. They can see it, they can believe it. Here is Houston, again, trying to play centrally. One back high up the pitch. It's Bell with the takeaway. Dynamo trying to assert themselves. This ball flashed across goal and headed down but wide. A wonderful service right onto the head of Artur Souza, former Red Bull Bragantino man. McPartland had come out. Trainers immediately motioned onto the pitch by Jorge Escobar, and this will bring things to a screeching halt as Souza, he is down and in a world of pain right now. Souza getting the start at the center striker position up front in this 4-2-3-1 this evening for Jeremy Hurdle. He takes on so much more emphasis considering the news that the club had loaned Gilberto Rivera out to Phoenix Rising for the duration of the season. 3 goals so far for Rivera to open the campaign, asking a lot of number 9 in orange and white. And you see right there at the end of it, McPartland had come out hoping to parry that shot away should it make it on target, and they end up colliding with each other, and Souza worse for wear on that collision. He is back to his feet. Souza does give this Dynamo Dos team a bit of a different profile for their MLS Next Pro side. Over the last few seasons, they've really made a concerted effort. Pat Onstadt, president of soccer for this club, and the rest of the front office to really rebuild the academy system. Emphasis on working their academy players up through this Dynamo Dos team. Mentioned moments ago that this play back underway. This was the youngest team by average age a season ago in MLS Next Pro. They haven't gotten much older, but they do bring guys in like a Souza in the offseason via the loan from Red Bull Bragantino. Also spent some time in the Corinthians Academy as well. And he does help sort of raise that age level, yes, but brings a wealth of international experience at a high level and to help also raise the profile for this Dynamo team who are looking to get back to the playoffs in 2026. Finished with 9 wins, fewest in a season in club history a season ago. Back at full strength. Souza there at the bottom of the screen, charging on the pitch. Wagner able to give it back up over to Lillington. Looking for that combination out wide. Had McDonald streaking in. Good little 1-2 there between he and Tyson Pierce. It sets St. Louis up with a throw in deep in toward this final third. CITY2, they will back up for this long throw in. I remember talking to interim manager a season ago, John Hackworth, who took over after David Critchley moved on to be caretaker manager for the MLS side, and he said that these long throws, so many teams are adopting them because they're so difficult to defend. You have to layer your runs defensively in order to turn them away. Does go ricocheting off the head of a defender. Pierce looking to play it back forward, unable to do so. And it will be another throw, this time on the near touchline for St. Louis. Holding firm is that defensive shape for Houston. They force St. Louis into a turnover at the midfield stripe. And here's Doman leading the charge. Knifing around, deflecting through, almost making its way over to Jemani Bell. Picked up once more by Reese Miller, and they will cycle this ball around. When Houston are getting into this attacking half, they are being very patient, not afraid to recycle some of these runs, waiting for channels to open up. This cross whipped in. McPartland will let that fall out. And it will be a goal kick for Lucas McPartland, the St. Louis City Academy product, former St. Louis Scott Gallagher netminder. The City Academy having a very successful MLS Next Flex tournament last week down in Frisco, Texas. A combined 6-2-1 mark for the St. Louis City Academy, but also the U19s qualifying for the MLS Next Cup later on this year by winning their group. Whether it be David Critchley, whether it be John Hackworth a season ago, whether it be Bobby Murphy as well, back a few years ago as Pedro Cruz able to steer clear of danger. They've all said the same thing, that St. Louis, they're so uniquely situated to help develop high-end talent, and they credit the fact that there is such a diverse wealth of talent here in St. Louis. Meanwhile, here is Houston knocking. They'll cut this one back, top of the area, squaring up, and firing that one wide is Dynamo Dos. Samir Muhammad able to get that shot off. And you talk about academy players who can perform at a high level as this goes skipping back to Pedro Cruz. Muhammad, part of the Houston Dynamo U18 squad. He opened the MLS next season here in 2026. 20 goal contributions in 13 MLS Next appearances for the Dynamo U18 side. 14 goals of his own, 39 in orange and white. He's a guy to watch out for. High riser through this academy system. Meanwhile, here's Gustavo Doman. They'll work it back to him. On the turn, it's Bell. Shifting back to the outside. Bell surveying. Able to switch this ball. Bell will cut this inside, looking to slip it back through over to Doman. And St. Louis all over it. Doman pressing high, though. Able to deflect that away initially from Stone Marion. And it finally caroms back to Lucas McPartland. So far, both teams still feeling their way through the infancy of this contest. We are coming up on about a half hour elapsed of this full 90. St. Louis, they have 2 shots, but Houston Dynamo Dos, they have the only shot on target between either of these teams, despite 40% possession for the visitors from Houston, Texas. Dynamo Dos, where they've had a lot of success so far, as they have St. Louis pinned back at least for a moment. They are employing a bit of a midfield press and trap in terms of their zonal defending out of this 5-2-3 pressing shape. Here they are again. This time it's Arana. Hata wanted to go forward with it. Ultimately falls back to Arana. He'll cut it over. It's Di Morelli now on it. St. Louis are doing a good job to start this contest when shifting into their low block. Keeping that shape very tight, very compact. Not a lot of space between it. There's not a lot of space to move for Houston Dynamo Dos, who go forward with it now, or at least attempt to. And we get a whistle from Jorge Escobar. He just sat down, but there at the bottom of the screen in the white ball cap is Jeremy Hurdle, the interim manager appointed in February of 2026. Marcelo Santos was promoted to first-team assistant under first-team manager Ben Olsen. He's no stranger to stepping into this managerial spot for Houston Dynamo Dos in an interim role. Did so in 2024 when the club went 10-11-7 under his direction. Got to start with this organization as the Dynamo U15 Academy coach as play is back underway. And this time, Houston will try their hand from the far side. It's turned over, though, and St. Louis quickly countering, working it out wide. It's Riley Lynch. Had some issues getting on it, wanted a whistle, and he's not going to get it. Quickly turning this upfield and speeding ahead is Bell. Bell looking to play Reese Miller through. McPartland comes out, and the centering pass deflected out of play. This left flank is where Houston had a lot of success against Colorado, created numerical advantages, a lot of overloads time and time again. That time getting out in transition on the left-hand side. It almost bore fruit. But we stay scoreless in this clash of Western Conference Titans. St. Louis trying to pick their spot, going over the top, running in behind, and running onto it is McDonald. McDonald! Patrick McDonald. From nothing comes something for St. Louis, who grabbed the lead at home, 1-0. Opting to go direct this time over the top of that defensive block for Dynamo Dose, and that is simply all Patrick McDonald. A great ball forward, but an even better effort to run onto it, get past the defender, and slot it past Pedro Cruz for his second of the season. David Critchley at the start of 2025, he had called Patrick McDonald a crucial addition to this team. One, because of obviously the experience he brings. Former 59th overall pick for Toronto FC, spent time at Indiana collegiately, 22 appearances, 3 goal contributions, and MLS Next Pro with Toronto FC 2. Called McDonald crucial because of how he keeps this team organized as well. And he's also taken on a leadership role off the pitch. This time taking on the leadership role on the pitch and leading St. Louis into a lead. CITY2 drawing first blood here against Dynamo Dose. Just the 4th goal Houston have conceded. It's only the 3rd goal that Houston have conceded in the last 300 minutes of football. So many times during my opportunities to chat with David Critchley, he has talked about the CITY2 team's innate ability to diagnose problems on the fly, be adaptable, and ultimately find ways to creatively break teams down. St. Louis, they had tried so many times in this first, prior to that goal, first almost 30 minutes of a traditional build-out, building from the back, wanting to work it on the flanks. It wasn't working. Houston Dynamo, they were really controlling that middle third, not allowing St. Louis to progress easily into the attacking half. And so what do? They try their hand going over the top, proving their manager right once more. And now it's Houston Dynamo Dose looking for the response. Cutting inside, edge of that 18, having a go from distance was Muhammad, and that will go sailing high. Once again, it's Doman coming up with the possession off the turnover right around that halfway line. He's roamed around, number 8 in orange in the center of your screen. They have him working in that double pivot today with Matthew Arana. Those two right in front of the back four for Houston Dynamo. That relationship very crucial for how Houston not just gets coverage in behind when turning it over, but when they go forward with it. They go forward with it now. Back to Reese Miller. Miller streaking in. Miller putting it in front. St. Louis unable to clear it yet, and this will be a whistle and more. A card will come out from Jorge Escobar. It'll be Jack Wagner, the former Indiana Hoosier. Shown yellow, had gone to ground, trying to keep that possession away from Houston Dynamo. Right here, watch it shift into focus on the right side of your screen. There's Wagner right there, going to ground and catching the ankles of Gustavo Doman. The first booking this contest has seen has not been an abundantly physical affair so far. That's just the 5th foul that has been whistled for. It does set Houston Dynamo Dos up in a real inviting position here as DiMorelli and Bell will size it up. They have scored off a free kick once so far in 2026. J.J. Bell touches up. Now Bell trying to fire that through a crowd in front. Unable to do so. Quickly trying to restart play off the throw-in as Dynamo Dos, and they do. Hata, former Seattle U man of the NCAA Division I level. Pushed up ahead. Able to find Matthew Arana, unable to stay on the right side of that restraining line, though, and the offside flag comes up. Matthew Arana, a player that Jeremy Hurdle spoke at length about earlier in the week. He's such a highly touted player, just 15 years old, signed that homegrown deal not all that long ago. The youngest homegrown signing in Houston Dynamo club history. Hasn't been with the organization all that long, just joined the academy back in 2021. And Jeremy Hurdle, he had said that most important thing is that they want to try to help him just keep his feet on the ground. It can be so hard as a young guy having all this outside noise, all the attention on you. Here is St. Louis on the underlap. Junt trying to cut it back in front. It is knocked out of play, and it will stay here with St. Louis, who done well for themselves to stack up the set-piece opportunities. Counting their one attacking half free kick they've had in these first 36 minutes, they've 4 set pieces. This is their 3rd corner. Rather, this will be a throw-in for St. Louis. And it will be another long throw-in, which they treat almost, St. Louis do, like an additional set-piece opportunity. This time it's Lillington backing up. He'll chuck this one into the area, pinballing around in front, and finally hammered over the net and out. Hear the oohs and the ahs from this crowd on hand inside Energizer Park. They thought that one was another opportunity for St. Louis that was going to trickle past Pedro Cruz. Dynamo Dos, though, they come away unscathed once more. Houston, they have made a concerted effort in this first half to get touches inside the penalty area, really test that box defending of St. Louis City 2. Already 12 touches inside the St. Louis City 2 18-yard box. Of their 5 total shots, 3 of them have been inside, but all 3 of those have gone off target, turned over, counter quickly developing for St. Louis and quickly canceled out. In behind now, here's Souza running at that final defender. Souza, late arriving run, whipped toward goal, and it's in! Matteo Di Morelli pulling the strings and able to pull Houston back level, 1-1 in St. Louis. The 8th career goal for Di Morelli, the Houston native, just weaving in and out. Doesn't need a lot of daylight there. Netting it into the top corner past McPartland. New life for Dynamo Dos. Jeremy Hurdle had said when in possession, Houston Dynamo, they must assert themselves, establish control, be able to ride that wave of the rhythmic moments of the game. When they don't have control, be able to wrestle it back from St. Louis. CITY2, they grabbed the lead first, but Houston Dynamo Dos able to battle back and level this contest here in the 38th minute. Driven forward, that long, wanting ball from CITY2, and instead it spills out of play. It will be Reese Miller who will have the throw. And consecutive throws coming here for Houston Dynamo. One of the things that Jeremy Hurdle had mentioned in our chat was this is an incredibly unselfish Houston Dynamo team. You look at the amount of goals they've scored, but it's the amount of goal scorers they've had as well. No player on this team has more than 3 goals so far, and that is Austin Brummett, the super draft selection, who is on the bench today, not in the first 11 out for Jeremy Hurdle. But he said the internal competition that exists within this Houston Dynamo training environment and organization helps get the best out of these players. And he feels like that's been the biggest catalyst behind their strong start, that togetherness, guys working for each other, the unselfish play. Up ahead, it's Riley Lynch, the player of the month in MLS Next Pro, putting some strain on that back line for Houston Dynamo. Thumped out of play, and it will be a throw for CITY2. Lillington and company will have to give chase. Losing some ground, St. Louis is. CITY2 having some more issues getting across that midfield stripe. See the amount of congestion that Houston has there in the middle of the park. St. Louis, they are able to progress forward, though. Here's Pierce on the left, lifts it inside, trying to work it back top of the area to Riley Lynch, and again cleared by Dynamo Dos. Whistle comes in from Jorge Escobar. It'll be Arana shown that whistle as we sit just about 3 minutes plus added time away from the halftime whistle. A jam-packed halftime. When we do get that whistle, highlights, stats, we'll head to the Big Apple. A great feature story out of NYC FC. We'll talk about some big news regarding the league itself. All of that and more on the halftime report. First, we have to get there, and Houston trying to take that lead going into the half, perhaps. Souza denied goal. Here is Riley Lynch again. And ultimately worked back over to Lillington. McPartland trying to pick out his man going forward. Successful there. It was Pierce looking to lead the way in to the late arriving Palmer Alt. And cleared again by Houston. The way both these teams press, the way both these teams turn teams over, as Pierce will fire this cross out of play. And it will be a Pedro Cruz goal clearance. Rest defense shifting into the primary focus for both Houston and St. Louis. Their ability to get numbers back when losing possession. That has been something that has stood out for Houston Dynamo Dos. There have been moments where St. Louis have sped them up, have been able to hit them in transition. There haven't been many opportunities generated from it, simply because of the ability for Dynamo Dos to keep these numbers back in coverage. Hata will go ahead with it, pass a bit behind Bell. Still able to corral that ball in. Trying his hand from distance there was Mohammed, and instead finding the end line, specifically the ad board. And now it'll be McPartland's turn to put a foot into this one and restart play. Volleyed forward here by CITY2. Just trying to find some option going forward. Instead, it'll be Stone Marion who will have the throw. Former BOHFS forward and midfielder out of the Midwest Premier League. A lot of domestic soccer fans might recognize that name. They were a team that qualified for the 2026 U.S. Open Cup. Advanced around. Fourth official handing out 4 minutes of added time at the end of this contest. Here's Pedro Cruz, way away from his home and goal. Numbers forward again for St. Louis. They dislodge that ball, and now here they come. Wagner out wide. It's Tyson Pierce sizing up options. Well, they'll funnel it back forward. Laid off underneath. It's McDonald, the goal scorer for CITY2. He's dispossessed. It's been a real struggle for Houston Dynamo Dos these last few minutes to get out of this defensive half of the field. St. Louis forcing another turnover again, and here is Chris Pearson wearing the captain's armband this evening. Coming over in the offseason from Las Vegas Lights. David Critchley, he said that he's an important guy for this St. Louis City team. Gives him a bit of a different profile. This is a City side that do like to play their young guys. Here is Lynch trying to pick out that far corner. And instead, across the face of goal it goes, and out the other side. Riley Lynch is a force to be reckoned with. A 5-goal contribution month of April. 3 goals of his own. Almost slotting St. Louis back into the lead. It's been an evenly matched contest so far. It's been an evenly matched series all time between St. Louis and Houston Dynamo Dos. 3 wins for both sides, and they've twice played to draws. St. Louis did win the season series a year ago, picking up a win at home against Dynamo Dos in the early junctures of the season. They ended up sharing the points through regulation toward the tail end of 2025. Played into space, Wagner running onto it. Now turning it back, trying to leave it off, spilling around in the area, still free. Alt picking up the pieces. Now fired back through. And hacked away again for a clearance by Houston Dynamo. Some of those interior channels are starting to open up. St. Louis, they have been good in the half spaces in this opening 45 minutes. Driven clear once again by Houston. McPartland will track back and get that. Just about 30 seconds and change away from the halftime whistle from Jorge Escobar. Over the top, here's Pierce in behind. Pierce, defender goes to ground, able to block that cross out. Betancourt will just drill this one out of play. And St. Louis, again, will have the throw. Running onto it again, this is Pierce. Now playing it into the path of Patrick McDonald. McDonald, official wags the finger, says no foul. Couple of groans and protests from this crowd here inside Energizer Park. And there is the halftime whistle from Jorge Escobar. We closed the first half where we started it. All square through 45 minutes of play. 1-1 is our score at the half. Coming up in our halftime show, we get to know a talented young player carving out his path in the Big Apple and an announcement that will shift the landscape of MLS Next Pro. Plus highlights and stats, all that after a brief timeout.
Should be a fun season of MLS Next Pro. Oh my! Pedrinho wins it!
Back in St. Louis, well, there's no shortage of success stories in MLS coming out of the New York market. Another solid young player is making his way with New York City Football Club. So let's get to know Arnau Farnos.
I think for sure was my mom. She was the first one to know it because she was working, and I sent her a message and I was like, please don't call because we have a meeting right now But like I have to tell you, like they just told me like they want me to sign first team deal. So she was like, oh my God. Yeah, it was definitely my mom. Hi, I'm Arnaud Farnos, and I'm a midfielder / winger, and I play for New York City FC. When I signed here with the second team, my goal was always to be part of the first team, and since the moment I got drafted, that was my goal, that was my dream. And nothing is easy, you know, so that's why you have to work for it. Every call-up is an opportunity, and I'm thankful for the coaches to give me those opportunities. But like, it's not about the games, it's about every day, how you practice, how you prepare yourself, physically and mentally. And when the opportunity comes, that you have to be ready and know that if you have the opportunity, you have to prove yourself. They push you a lot, which is a really good sign. But they also have a really good connection with the team, special connection with the players also. And they are open, which is also important for a player because it gets you confident when you play and when you train. And he was always super close, coach and all the staff, and give me a lot of confidence to me. And that's why I feel like I'm super happy for being part of this team, for the confidence from the staff and also from the players. One of the things, for example, Nico always says when he's here is like, and I've took it from all the players as well, but like, you are doing what you like and what's your passion. So coming here to practice, you are privileged, you know, having this job, because you are doing something that you really like and you really can, you grow with it. And coming here every day, yeah, there is people working for you, for the treatment, they are cooking for you, and how many people would love to have and to be in the position that you are right now. So I would say just enjoy the moment, push yourself in the moment that you have to push yourself, and yeah, enjoy. Super excited at the moment when I saw the ball going in. I kind of didn't believe it at the beginning, but after it was like a happiness feeling, you know, especially after with all my teammates, like they congrat me at the end of the game, and everybody came to support me and saying congratulations, and it was a really happy moment and special moment in my career. I think I had a lot of good coaches in my career. I would say probably when I was at Celta, I would say Claudio. But I would say my best moment playing soccer was the decision to make here and go to college. The 4 years at Oregon State with all the coaches I had and all the staff I had, they really helped me develop myself physically and mentally. And I think it was the step that I needed in order to be a professional soccer player. So I'm super grateful for the opportunity that the Oregon State gave me. Keep supporting us, keeping showing ourselves, keep coming to our games, because probably right now we are not having the best, we are not in the best moment of the season, but we're for sure gonna come back, and we're for sure gonna give some happy news soon to the fans.
Very excited to be here officially. You know, I helped out a little bit last year. You know, I really enjoyed my time working with the players, working with the staff. So, you know, I'm glad to be able to be on the staff full time and be involved. Towards the end of my career, I started thinking about what, you know, I wanted to do, you know, post playing, and, you know, coaching was something that for a while I didn't know if I wanted to do it. When my kids started to get a little bit older and I started doing it with them, you know, I started enjoying it, and I thought, you know, I had a lot of knowledge that I could pass down to, you know, young players. That was kind of an easy decision after thinking about it. There's lots of different things that I can teach them from my career, but also, you know, the mentality, you know, the intensity, the winning mentality is what I want to bring to the young guys, because they're going to need that. I played at a high level college, and I was still like a little bit overwhelmed when I first got here, you know, and it's the adaptation. If you don't do it quick at that time, then you were kind of out of the system. But now I think, especially with the academy and bringing those guys up and then moving into a environment like MLS Next Pro with North Texas, then I think it's a big jump in the quality of, you know, everything that is involved with this. And I think it's huge for developing players. I think there used to be a lot of guys who kind of got pushed out of the system if it wasn't working right away, but now those guys maybe get a second chance and can develop into good players. Yeah, it feels good. I mean, it feels like home. Like you said, I've been here for a long time. I know a lot of people here. You know, I knew John beforehand. I knew a lot of the other staff beforehand, and even some of the players I still know. So it's just nice to be back in, you know, a familiar environment and be able to give these players my knowledge. This year, I think my goal is to improve our defensive solidarity. Obviously, I want to try to improve individually the players in the defensive line, help them improve their tendencies. But, you know, as a unit, I want our group to be solid and to give up less goals. That's always the goal. And for me, that was like my big thing as a player throughout my career. I always wanted to give up less goals, and I think that's something I want to pass on to these defensive players.
Back in St. Louis, big news coming out of MLS Next Pro this week. MLS has agreed to a deal that will see global investment firm KKR make a strategic investment and partner with MLS Next Pro. KKR will inject capital into MLS Next Pro with an eye on growing the league and its footprint around the continent. In conjunction with MLS, the partnership will oversee commercial strategy as it looks to move the 27 MLS-affiliated Next Pro teams into new markets, with an eye on building brands within those communities and seeking stadium development deals. We will no doubt hear more and see more about this in the coming seasons. Obviously, big news there for MLS Next Pro. As for our contest, we have reached the halftime break between St. Louis and Houston Dynamo. 1-1, all square, through 45 minutes of play. It's an exciting 45 minutes of football in the books, and there have been some exciting 90 full minutes of football or MLS Next Pro in the books as we take a look at our scores around the league. Looking at the Western Conference, Ventura County on Wednesday earlier this week, continuing its strong run of form. A peek at the Western Conference table tells us Ventura County 4-3-3 in their first 10 contests of the season, but third place right now in the Western Conference table behind Houston Dynamo and St. Louis. They are on the road tomorrow at Portland Timbers, who find themselves in the 7th place in the Western Conference table. As we look ahead to our upcoming schedule, we mentioned the Ventura County fixture. LAFC will take on Real Monarchs out in the Western Conference. And that match between Austin FC and Tacoma Defiance, very important for Verdos, who right now are tied points-wise with San Jose Earthquakes. But San Jose Earthquakes, they have put 5 goals on the board in their contest today, looking likely that they are going to not just pull away from that tie with Austin FC, but even leapfrog Minnesota United FC, who are alone right now in 4th in the Western Conference table. The Loons 4-3-1 in their first 8 fixtures of 2026. Well, those are the contests that are to come. Here is our contest, and specifically our halftime highlights to get you up to speed on how we got to this point. Houston Dynamo Dos, early on, they were knocking a very early test of Lucas McPartland via Gustavo Doman, who was parried away by McPartland. One of a couple saves McPartland had. This one onto the head of Artur Souza, headed wide. Dynamo Dos, they'd have some opportunities in transition, getting in behind that back line of St. Louis. Not something we see traditionally for St. Louis. But speaking of getting in behind the back line, it's Patrick McDonald. McDonald, the turn, the burn, the fire into the lead for St. Louis CITY2. It would be a short-lived lead for St. Louis as Houston Dynamo, they'd come back down. And this is Di Morelli, a curling effort, able to put Houston Dynamo Dos on level terms. That goal coming 9 minutes after Dynamo surrendered the lead. That is where we stand, 1-1 through 45, and we will head back to break. When we return to the Show Me State, the opening kick of the second half between Dynamo Dos and CITY2.
Boys hear sentiment, flow tastes sweet like cinnamon. Open up doors, I'm a gentleman. View top floor, I'm still staying ahead of them. Running on fumes and adrenaline. Do what I do best, can't rush in like a roulette. You can't name a better duet. Don't ask questions, trying to figure out what sound. Don't worry about what next, just wanna know what's next. Man, I say it so loud. Don't worry about what next, just know we got now. Oh yes, man, I say it oh so proud. Don't worry about what next, just know we got now.
Should be a fun season of MLS Next Pro. Oh my! Pedrinho wins it!
The unique energy of a Sunday night. Ideal for calm music, whispers, stargazing, reflection, and a relaxed environment. Sunday nights were made for this.
Both teams out of the halftime dressing room, and we are all slated to resume the contest for half number 2 between Houston Dynamo Dos and St. Louis CITY2. CITY2 grabbing the lead in the 29th minute, Dynamo Dos equalizing in the 38th. Anybody's ball game as we barrel in toward the second 45 minutes. Neither of these teams has a blemish on their record to this juncture. Houston Dynamo Dos, their manager, Jeremy Hurdle, he had talked about this team's ability. As Jorge Escobar sounds the whistle, and we're back underway for the second half to grow into the contest, to get better as the game goes on. You go back to their last match against Colorado Rapids, had a second half goal, had one in first half. Stoppage time. Early on, though, it's St. Louis City knocking on the door as Riley Lynch able to provide the width there. 3 matches ago now for this Houston Dynamo Dos side. The winner against Real Monarchs coming in the 73rd minute. No shortage of second half goals. Trying to keep that trend going as Houston Dynamo on the road. But St. Louis trying to pull themselves back into the lead. They've had a lot of success creating havoc on this end when Dynamo Dos are trying to build out from the back or clear it out of the back. Pierce has to give it over to Kyle Hebert. Hebert making the return to the 11 this evening for St. Louis CITY2. 5th appearance. He's made as many starts as well. No change at the 45-minute break for either of these teams. Here's DiMorelli, the goal scorer for Houston Dynamo. Back over to Betancourt, and they will cycle this around. Arana. And Houston will reset once more. Dynamo Dose, they do like to work it up the near and far touchlines. One thing that Jeremy Hurdle emphasized in our midweek chat was their ability this season to create some of these passing triangles along the touchlines, those pockets of space to help open things up going forward, get numbers running in toward goal. St. Louis haven't allowed many of those opportunities to develop. Here's Muhammad up ahead. It's DiMorelli. DiMorelli going for goal. And McPartland able to keep it out. A good service here from DiMorelli. Ultimately turning into a shot from Matteo DiMorelli, the lone goal scorer for Dynamo Dose in the first 45 minutes. McDonald now connecting forward. A bit too much weight behind that ball from Wagner. Out it goes, was seeking Riley Lynch. Pearson, the Jamaican, he'll step forward, win that ball back in that midfield space. And now Wagner goes forward again. Trying to carve an opening was Palmer Alt there. Bit of an awkward collision as play will be brought to a halt, courtesy of the whistle from Jorge Escobar. This is a Houston Dynamo attack this season that, counting the goals scored in that first half, 21 goals they've put past opposition netminders, and this contest still yet to be brought to a restart and finally touched up. Dynamo on the season, about a mid-pack team in terms of expected goals, of 1.84 XG coming into this. They are well overperforming that in terms of their goals per match average. Just about 2.6 they're averaging in terms of goals per match this season. One of the highest rates in MLS Next Pro. And now perhaps another. It's Bell into his path, trying to peel it back over to Reese Miller, and it will go out for a Dynamo Dose corner. Dynamo did not have a corner in the opening 45 minutes. And it'll be Jemani Bell. Bell, in swinging ball. First contact made by CITY2. Able to nod that one away. Arana trying to keep things on here for Houston, who do maintain the possession. Back wide they go. Hata. Makutia carries it along. Shoveled back over to Bell. Steps past one. Bell worked back out wide. Trying to find that opening. It's Bell again. Elects to go over to Reese Miller into space. Now back to Bell. Those two playing give and go with each other. Cut inside. Arana just out of his reach. Turned over, but the real work beginning here for CITY2, trying to get out of this defensive half. David Critchley had joked this week because of the similarities between these teams as we get another stoppage whistled for. He said that the team with the lowest PPDA in this match is likely going to be the winner walking away from it. For those that are not aware, PPDA passes per defensive action. St. Louis, in terms of their passes per defensive action number this season, on average, very low number, and the lower you go, the better off you are. CITY2, the 10th lowest PPDA in MLS Next Pro in terms of the ferocity of their press. Meanwhile, here's Palmer Alt over on the left-hand side, trying to turn it back. Joining in on the attack is Pierce. Now over to McDonald. Hebert. McDonald elects to give it back to Hebert. Prior to this season, Kyle Hebert, he had not made an MLS Next Pro appearance since that inaugural Next Pro campaign where he saw 25 matches for CITY2. It's turned over. Here comes Houston Dynamo. Cut through. It's Mohamed! The 18-year-old Samir Mohamed just in that golden zone at the top of the area, all alone, able to unfurl a left-footed shot there. Couldn't put it in toward Lucas McPartland. Now there is an injured Dynamo Dos man, slow to get back to his feet, but is back to his feet. We've already seen St. Louis hit one over the top, courtesy of Patrick McDonald. Able to take the top off that defense. David Critchley had identified that as one of the most crucial aspects. Can they find that final ball going forward? You are seeing St. Louis. They are content to sit low when building out, trying to invite that pressure in hopes of going over the top on Houston Dynamo. Works its way out of play. Pierce will have the throw. That throw will be held, though, as there is another injured Houston Dynamo player. All that has been sorted out. Man back to his feet. Tossed back in by Tyson Pearson. Play back underway off the stoppage. Here is Pierce. Pierce dispossessed. And now Di Morelli looking to play that into the path of Artur Souza. Souza had the assist on the Di Morelli equalizer back in that first 45. Cruz let that roll into the area before picking it up. Right now, Artur Souza leading this Dynamo Dos team in touches inside the St. Louis penalty area with the 5. Created 3 chances already. With Rivera departing on the loan earlier in the week to Phoenix Rising, he shifts into focus as the leading man there at the top of this attack. St. Louis, they will make a pair of changes, 2 pairs of fresh legs charging on for David Critchley and company. Jamone Barkley and Yu Ota, the St. Louis City Academy product, will both come on. Jack Wagner among the two coming off. Joining him is Chris Pearson, who will hand the captain's armband off, and St. Louis making their first 2 substitutions of this contest. Play back underway. Paul Marault, his evening done after subbing out, and had an abundance of touches, 25, but was unable to create many chances against this rigid and unflexing Houston Dynamo defensive block. Barkley pulling that one in on the move. Barkley forward, it's Ota, the give and go, back inside, it's Barkley, and quickly racing over to deflect that out. Reese Miller able to clean things up. Right in that central channel, a good ball played in by Ota into the path of Barkley. It'll be another St. Louis corner. They had 2 of these in the opening 45 minutes. This is their first of the second half. Lynch goes the short route. Ota drops this into the mixer. Coated well defensively by Houston, who are trying to spring this ball free. Muhammad worked forward now. Arana. Still Arana on it, turning past Ota. Arana slots it back top of the area. It's Reese Miller. Miller leaves it off. Doman gave it up, ultimately back over to Betancourt. Now over, here's Samir Muhammad trying to play Doman through. That well out of his reach. And it will roll across the end line once more. Now Houston Dynamo Dos, they will answer the double change from St. Louis City 2 with 2 changes of their own. Diego Gonzalez will come on, joining him, D'Alessandro Herrera. Herrera, the product of Houston Christian University. Out of the Ohio Valley Conference, had a chance to lead his Huskies team to the OVC championship game in consecutive seasons and has since come over and joined Dynamo Dos in the offseason. 4th appearance of the year for the 22-year-old Texan. Already has a goal to his credit. Gonzalez, the Houston native, as well coming on. He scored a goal this season. The 2024 Next Pro Best 11 selection. 70 career appearances now for Gonzalez. 18 in orange and white, including this appearance today. As we have crossed over the hour mark played, Houston Dynamo, the team who scored the most recent between City 2 and Dynamo Dos. That coming back in the 38th minute. Here's Bell. Overran the ball, falling back to his feet. Bell carving an opening. And McPartland getting the fingertips on it. Able to parry it out of play. J.J. Bell, he's a high riser in this academy system. One of the more highly touted players coming up through the Houston Dynamo Academy. And you see why. His ability to create pockets of space. Doesn't need a lot of daylight to get those efforts off. Winning a corner here for Dynamo Dos. It'll be Gonzalez taking it. Whipped in, outswinging, ball headed down and in! Houston Dynamo down a goal, now up a goal on the road. They are cruising in St. Louis, 2-1. This is a good service in from Gonzalez. Outswing ball, running onto it. Noah Betancourt opening his account in 2026 and firing Houston into the lead. Jeremy Hurdle, he had said that this magnitude of a match, it would test the mettle of his team. Can they play their game on the road in this environment against a team that they view as equals to them in terms of the success, in terms of the talent they have, the run that they are on? They went down a goal, but they have shown great fortitude to come charging back away from home. St. Louis electing to make a change during that break and play. Andrew DeGans will come on. Off goes Tyson Pierce. Now St. Louis finding themselves in a spot that isn't exactly all that familiar to them here in 2026. You have to go back to the Colorado Rapids 2 match to find the last time that St. Louis trailed at home this season. They were able to battle back in that contest, courtesy of a Riley Lynch goal in 90+3 second half stoppage time. Ended up getting the extra point in the shootout, 5-3 in that 2-2 draw. Cutting it back over. Here's Ota connecting with Alt, who volleys it forward in the vicinity of Barkley. Not clear by Dynamo Dos, and yet still to be clear by Houston. Charging in is Lillington, trying to head that back along, and driven back down by Houston Dynamo. Into the path of DiMorelli. Had the opening goal. Now DiMorelli trying to play Souza through and intercepted instead by McPartland. Against Minnesota United last week, St. Louis, despite not having a goal walking away from that contest, the most successful of their builds came on that left side when they were able to go forward and ahead to Palmer Alt. Houston, they have identified these flanks this evening, and they are taking that spacing away from St. Louis on the wings. Trying to funnel it back over now, over on that right-hand side. CITY2 can't corral that ball in. Across the end line it goes, and it will be a goal clearance. When St. Louis are getting it out into the wings, Dynamo Dos, they are forcing St. Louis to try to come back inside and run right into that mess of bodies and what has been, at times, a narrow defensive shape for Houston. Miller will carry this one along. Their ability to get Reese Miller high into the attack from his role as the left fullback has added an extra layer to this Dynamo attack as the contest has carried on. He's made some good runs as he plays it forward over to Bell. Lifted up ahead, seeking Bell. Bit too much for him to handle. Couldn't head it along, and instead it goes out of play. David Critchley had said this week that his message coming into this Saturday fixture was he wanted his team to embrace the challenge of facing a very good opposition in Houston Dynamo Dose. Wanted them to embrace that mental challenges. He said they're the best team in the league this season, in Critchley's opinion. Moreover, though, Critchley said his team, because of their mental fortitude, they relish opportunities like this. That mental fortitude put to the test now. Here's Bell going for it, and Bell adding a third to Houston's tally. Three unanswered for Dynamo Dose, courtesy of J.J. Bell. Bell just stepping inside there and rifling it past McPartland. The transitional space has been crucial to Houston's success in this second half especially. J.J. Bell having an immense year for Houston Dynamo Dose. Already his third goal of the season. Had just 2 in his career. And now St. Louis looking to mix things up more as they will try to bring more numbers on at the soonest available opportunity. Houston Dynamo flexing their muscles on the road, and now here's Bell back on it again. DiMorelli toppled there, and it will draw a whistle for a stoppage. It was DiMorelli in the 38th minute as we get another whistle, and a card will come out from Jorge Escobar. DiMorelli in the 38th, and then Betancourt and Bell 7 minutes apart in the 62nd and 69th minutes respectively. Look at that foul again, center of your screen. It's 66 in Navy. Zach Lillington, former UC Davis man, shown that yellow. Here's Muhammad now. Trying to work his way inside, and does. DiMorelli trying to shake free of a challenge, instead turns it over. Ota will turn this upfield. On to Palmer Alt. Alt trying to take on one too many of those final defenders as St. Louis making changes. Sidney Paris coming on. Lorenzo Cornelius also coming on for St. Louis. 4 of their 5 changes have been made. Meanwhile, Houston Dynamo Dose, they do counter with 1 change of their own. Austin Brummett, the 78th pick in the most recent Super Draft and former Seattle Sounders Academy player. He is on in this contest for a Dynamo Dose team who they have been the aggressors here in half number 2. They have the 2-goal lead. And now St. Louis will make those aforementioned changes as Cornelius and Paris will come on. Ninth appearance of the season for Austin Brummett, the New Hampshire native. 3 goals to his credit in 2026. And Artur Souza's evening is done, and quite the productive evening it was. Had the 3 chances created, had a shot on target, set up the assist on the DiMorelli goal. And now if you're Houston Dynamo, you're just trying to lock in and salt away these final handful of minutes and pick up what would be a massive win on the road. As it stands right now, should this result hold, it would be 4 wins on the bounce for Houston Dynamo Dos. St. Louis, though, they're not a team that goes away quietly. They've shown a real adept nature at scoring late in contests. This whipped across the face of goal, deflected away. Ricocheting back to the feet of Muhammad. St. Louis so far unable to dislodge that ball, and now Palmer Alt is impeded. That will be a free kick here for St. Louis City 2. Barkley and Palmer Alt sizing things up. Alt, the 36th overall pick in the Super Draft by Colorado Rapids. It's been a season at Indiana, some time at Butler collegiately as well. Alt backing off. It'll be Barkley, the offering, and Pedro Cruz able to bat it away again. Two saves on the evening for Pedro Cruz. None bigger than that one. It does go out for a throw to City 2. Into the Gans. Now back to Barkley. Flashed back post. Cleared out of play, and it'll stay on this end as St. Louis will have another corner. That's a good take right around the outside of that wall from Barkley. Able to just break that ball back inside. As St. Louis moving quickly on the corner, they go short again. Second ball served in by City 2. Dynamo Dos, as much as their offense is going to get a lot of love in this contest, you have to be pleased if you're Jeremy Hurdle with the set-piece defense. You've given up an ample amount of set-piece opportunities this evening to a St. Louis City 2 team who are the top set-piece scoring team in the league. Now the cut back headed wide of goal and out of play. But despite those set-piece opportunities for St. Louis, no goals off them to speak of. That time it was DeGans cutting in on that near post. Nothing doing there for St. Louis. Inside the final 15-plus stoppage time to go here in regulation. St. Louis finding themselves in an unfamiliar spot in a 2-goal hole at home against this Houston Dynamo team who have continued to get better as this contest has carried toward the conclusion. St. Louis came into this contest, you have to go all the way back. The last time they lost a regular season home fixture, April 6th of 2025, a 1-0 loss against Colorado Rapids 2. 15 straight unbeaten in the regular season, all-time at Energizer Park, 29 wins, taking points in 45 of the 53 all-time contests played here at Energizer Park. It's been a fortress their home venue has. Here's Betancourt. Had the goal to extend the lead to 2 goals minutes ago. Now we get another whistle for a stoppage, much to the dismay of David Critchley, who looks on. They say numbers never lie. They don't typically, though, tell the full story, but the shot numbers in this contest do tell the full story. St. Louis, they've been able to generate 6 shots, but they have just the 1 shot on target so far in this contest. Meanwhile, Houston Dynamo continues to create 13 shots, 6 shots on target. They've made an effort to get into that penalty area. They have a +7 margin in that regard over St. Louis City 2. 21 touches in the City 2 penalty area. DeGans will charge forward with it. Looking to lead the way in behind again. Here's Alt trying to turn the corner. Has it knocked off his boots. It's out for another St. Louis corner. As we come up on the final 10 minutes. City 2, they elect to go short again. Whipped in. Barkley, his service. Cut out. Now back on to DeGans. St. Louis, they have elected to go short on almost all their corners. Now DeGans will fire this into the area. Takes a ricochet back. Trying to settle now is St. Louis. City 2 keeping things on here for the moment. Knocked away from Barkley. And just looking for the release. Dynamo 2 able to find it. DeGans, early ball ahead, trying to have Barkley run onto it. Wakutia beating him to the punch, though. I haven't called his name much tonight, but because of the defensive-minded nature of this Houston Dynamo Dose team, does deserve a shout-out how well they have defended this St. Louis City 2 side. Specifically, that play of the aforementioned Isaac Wakutia, the Houston native. He's a guy that the local outlet Bayou City Soccer that covers this Houston Dynamo organization, at the preseason they identified some of the biggest areas of need for the first team, the MLS side of this Dynamo Dose organization, or this Dynamo rather organization, as that cross goes off the side netting and out. And they had identified Wakutia as one of those guys who, when you look at his profile as a player, when you look at what he's done in his career, he looks well on the way to perhaps being one day a future sizable contributor with the Houston Dynamo organization. He's already contributed a lot in his young career. Later on this season, should he continue at this clip, will eclipse 5,000 career minutes in MLS Next Pro. Here is Barkley on it, splitting through 2. It's Barkley going for goal. Took a deflection once again. Nothing's come easy tonight for St. Louis City 2. Dynamo Dose getting bodies all in front into these passing and shooting lanes of St. Louis City 2. Fifth corner of the night loading here for St. Louis. There will be a bit of a delay to the restart of this contest. There is an injured player out on the pitch. Trainers will come out to assess the status of the man down. This, of course, is time that will be tacked on to the end of the full 90. One that, well, Houston didn't start off on the front foot. That was St. Louis in the 29th minute. They have scored 3 consecutive. First it was St. Louis in the 29th minute. Route 1 football over the top to Patrick McDonald. And McDonald getting past the final defender and firing St. Louis into the lead. That lead would be short-lived, though. 9 minutes later, Dynamo Dos would equalize. This is Matteo Di Morelli in the 38th minute, curling that past the outstretched hand of McPartland. And that is when things would start to turn. In the 62nd minute, fired in off the header from Betancourt. Bell would score another in the 69th, and that brings us to where we are, approaching the 84th minute. And it's St. Louis City 2 with a corner, needing goals quickly to get back into this. Jamone Barkley will have the service. Barkley swings this in, knotted down. Falls back to Cornelius, has his pocket picked. And a chance here for Dynamo Dos to get out on the break. Bell able to turn it upfield. Well recovered defensively by St. Louis. Now inviting some of that pressure. Able to win a free kick. Service in. Seeking Uota. Once again, knocked away via the header from Houston Dynamo. They don't have the numbers going forward right now, and they are forced into a turnover by St. Louis. Alt gets past one. Now Alt at the end line wants that cutback pass, and it is cleared out of play. Third corner in the last 6 minutes for St. Louis. If you're City 2 and David Critchley, you have to start producing off these set pieces, though, as Houston Dynamo. They have bodies in the substitution area ready to make 2 more changes. And they will make those changes now. Charging on, Mamadi Gianni, the 23-year-old super draft pick by Inter Miami. 54th overall pick, this super draft on. Whipped in here off the corner to get play back going. Micah Harris joining the aforementioned Gianni. Second ball served back out wide. That time it was DeGans with the service. Falls over to Jamone Barkley. Whistled wide. It stays here. Another corner quickly taken by Palmer Alt. DeGans back to Alt. Muscled off the ball by Herrera. Now tripped up is Di Morelli, which will draw a whistle. That goes against Sidney Paris and St. Louis. One of the biggest difference makers in this second half for Houston Dynamo. They have taken the ferocity out of the St. Louis press. Their ability to get balls forward on that long pass ahead, their ability to move the ball side to side, which was something they started to use as the first half carried to a close. Started moving this St. Louis defense around, didn't let them get set. Ball poked free by CITY2. Did take a ricochet all the way to the back line for St. Louis. Houston Dynamo team, they better get comfortable being away from home. Currently mired in a 10-match road skid, but go back to last season, they have performed well on the road. Won 6 of their last 7 away from home entering tonight, and they are just a few minutes away of making it 7 of 8 and becoming the only unbeaten team remaining in the Western Conference. Play back underway. Thumped ahead here for Dynamo Dos. In on goal again, cutting to the outside. They want 4, and they won't find it. McPartland able to come out and stymie that. CITY2 turn it over, and now back off to the races. It's Dynamo Dos. They don't have numbers ahead. Harris trying to weave out of a crowd still with possession, and does so successfully. Should this result hold, it's one that St. Louis will walk away from feeling a bit frustrated. They created the chances, but they were not able to put enough goals past Pedro Cruz and Houston Dynamo. 10 total shots tonight for St. Louis, 3 on target, but 4 of them going off target. Officially 4 minutes of stoppage time, according to the 4th official. Played up ahead into space. Out comes McPartland and slotted in. Austin Brummett makes it 4. Why not add the icing on the cake if you're Houston Dynamo Dos running off with all 3, 4-1. Just too much space conceded right through the middle of that back 3. And that is easy pickings for a man who already had 3 goals on the season. Make it 4 on the year and make it 4 on the day for Houston Dynamo Dos. A statement outing for Jeremy Hurdle's team. 4 unanswered goals scored to close this contest out on the road. All of those goals coming from 4 different goal scorers as well. Reiterating that point he made this week is this cut to the back stick, that this is such an unselfish team. They just play for each other. It's not about one guy. It's about the unit. And they have looked like a well-oiled unit. Swung in. Barkley trying to head that one down. Cleared off the line. And now it's Gustavo Doman with it. DiMorelli pinned back deep. Cornelius can't come up with it. On to the feet of Doman. A turnover and a counter, which will come to an end simply because of a foul committed by Houston Dynamo. "90 seconds away from the full-time whistle here in St. Louis, Missouri. DeGans will back off. It will be Jamone Barkley. Barkley, the service, drops it in out wide, and again, Dynamo Dos just coding that so well defensively. Jeremy Hurdle and company, they pulled all the right strings so far tonight. Whipped back in the vicinity of Pedro Cruz. It'll go wide, took a deflection, and St. Louis will have one last corner here. Marion works it back along, attacking the header and playing it on. Mamadi Gianni able to win a whistle. Jeremy Hurdle and Houston Dynamo Dos. A torrid start to 2026. And there is the whistle. Alone at the top is Houston Dynamo Dos. A resounding 4-1 win over St. Louis City 2 to take sole possession of the top spot in the Western Conference table. They get 4 goals from 4 different goal scorers, but only one was worthy of Man of the Match honors. And our Man of the Match presented by Adidas. It is Noah Betancourt. The goal that fired Houston into the lead, and they did not look back. In the 62nd minute, Betancourt, his second career goal, and none bigger for the 19-year-old and for Houston Dynamo Dos, who run away with it in St. Louis. Jeremy Hurdle had challenged his team to answer the call and step up, and they did that and then some. A 4-1 victory for the now Western Conference leading Houston Dynamo Dos. For our entire broadcast team, Jake Griffith, our final score from St. Louis, 4-1. Don't forget, you can watch MLS Next Pro all season long on MLSNextPro.com and OneFootball. Good night from the Show Me State.
This copyrighted broadcast of Major League Soccer may not be retransmitted, reproduced, or rebroadcast without the express written consent of Major League Soccer.